Well, with Season 5 rapidly approaching, albeit probably a lot slower than most people would like, I figured it made sense to do a recap slash take a look back at my prior analyses and see how they've held up over the past season. To start with the more minor ones, I speculated that both Luna and Discord may not actually be truly reformed. Well, both of these were proven to be more or less wrong. Luna in Season 4 did not go evil, despite the references to the Pony of Shadows and seeing how she turned to Nightmare Moon in the first place. Now, that's not to say she won't go evil again in a future season, but it doesn't seem super likely, and at least in the confines of Season 4, that is totally disproven. The matter of Discord's a little harder to say. From the finale, it is clear he actually is reformed, but he did turn evil. So I was wrong in that he actually was reformed, but I was right in that he'd go evil again. I'll call that a half confirmation? I don't know. It's mixed, if nothing else. So those more or less were disproven. However, my bigger theories, in particular that Celestia and Luna were born unicorns, and in particular unicorn royalty, and that Rarity would become an alicorn princess, and that she and Twilight would replace Luna and Celestia as Raiser of the Sun and the Moon, are still holding water. The season was mixed for those. My idea that Celestia and Luna were born unicorn royalty came down more or less to the fact that there didn't seem to be a natural alicorn population, that they were royalty, they were in charge of the Sun and the Moon, and it's unlikely the unicorns just would have given that up willy-nilly, and that Celestia is related to Blue Blood, who is a unicorn. Now, obviously, this is an oversimplification. If you're curious as to my actual argument and reasoning, I'd recommend you go check out my video on the history of Equestria. Regardless, though, the theory was not actively disproven this season, but it did take it in the short, so to speak. My headcanon was that Celestia and Luna became alicorns when they defeated Discord, and as we saw in the premiere, they were alicorns when they defeated Discord. Well, I immediately thought, well, maybe they became alicorns when they found the elements of harmony. And then we saw that they were alicorns when they found the elements of harmony. This would seem to weaken the theory. And it does. It doesn't disprove it, though, as ponies can become alicorns at a young age. We learn from the book, The Crystal Heart Spell, that Cadence was born a Pegasus. And as we see in A Canterlot Wedding, she became an alicorn at a fairly young age. No reason Celestia and Luna couldn't have become alicorns at a fairly young age as well. My theory is strengthened from the finale. In the finale, we hear that Tyric's brother was turned to the good side by seeing the ponies of Equestria and befriending a young Star Swirl the Bearded. Now, it's true he's never officially named, but from the image it is clear this is Star Swirl the Bearded. The issue with this is, we know from Heartswarming Eve that Star Swirl the Bearded was the mentor of Clover the Clever. Now, normally, someone who is a mentor tends to be on the older side. Doesn't necessarily mean they're old, but you're unlikely to call them young. This suggests, at least to me, that the events outlined in the finale took place before the events of Heartswarming Eve, which means this took place before Equestria was unified. But since we see Celestia and Luna here, it means Celestia and Luna were around before Equestria was unified, and they were alicorns before Equestria was unified. The fact that they were around when Equestria was unified is actually somewhat confirmed from Heartswarming Eve when we see the first flag of Equestria being two alicorns. Now, it's true they don't look exactly like Celestia and Luna, but it's fully possible that it is supposed to be them. This, then, seems to strongly suggest Luna and Celestia were born unicorns because, at that point in time, the unicorns were in charge of raising the sun and the moon. If Celestia and Luna had not been unicorns, at least originally, they probably would not have been in charge of the sun and the moon. I can just see an Earth pony who becomes an alicorn saying, "Oh, hey, now that I'm an alicorn, can I raise the sun and the moon unicorns?" I don't think the unicorn royalty would have gone for that. Now, it's true, there are some contradictions thanks to this, such as Tyric's brother was swayed by the love he saw, and yet if it was occurring before the unification of Equestria, there shouldn't have been that much love. So I'm not going to say that this theory is confirmed, but I would say that it is, if nothing else, strengthened. Now, my other theory, that Rarity would become an alicorn. Oh, boom! I'm done here. Okay, in all seriousness, this is probably just an animation error, and even if it isn't, my theory is that she'd become an alicorn princess and replace Celestia as Raiser of the Sun. For several reasons. I'll outline them here, but I'd recommend, if you haven't seen it and you're curious, to go back to my episode on Princess Celestia's replacement. I outline it in much more detail there. But by and large, it boils down to this. She's good at magic, probably better than she lets on. She is very good in social situations. She'd make an excellent figurehead, much better for that matter than Twilight, who we got confirmation in this season, does not do that element of princesshood well. That her cutie mark gems look identical to Celestia's jewelry, and that these gems don't appear anywhere else at any time in the show. That's a broad outline of my theory. So how did it hold up over Season 4? It took a massive, massive, massive body blow. But I would say it is still viable. Now, what was this body blow it took? Almost the only hard piece of evidence I had was that a gem that looks like Rarity's cutie mark had never been seen outside the confines of Celestia. Not even Rarity herself had jewelry that looked like her cutie mark. Well, in one scene, in one episode, in this one season, we actually see Rarity wearing a gem that looks like her cutie mark. In simple ways, when she is wearing her farm outfit, she has a couple gems that look like her cutie mark. I can't say that for any other gem we've seen. I think those gems are supposed to be her cutie mark. This is big, but I don't think it's shattering. It weakens the evidence, no question about that. Instead of being able to say a gem that looks like her cutie mark has never appeared, I have to say a gem that looks like her cutie mark has almost never appeared. And I could argue that, oh, well, it's still in the confines of Rarity, and she's kind of wearing it somewhat like Celestia, so it's okay. But it's not. It weakens it. Once again, I don't think it disproves it, but it does weaken it. But there is evidence that strengthens my theory. In particular, the Tree of Harmony. The Tree of Harmony has the cutie marks of Celestia, Luna, and Twilight on it. Interestingly, it does not have the cutie mark of Cadence, the other alicorn princess, on it. But Rarity's cutie mark actually does appear on it. The leaves on the Tree of Harmony are an off-white color, much like Rarity's coat color. In addition to being the same color as her cutie mark, has the same shape, the same pattern as her cutie mark. Now, this isn't a super common pattern. It could just be an animation derp on the part of the animators, but at the same time, there's a compelling argument to be made that the writers want to show what they have coming down the road, so that it makes sense. But if they were to just stick Rarity's cutie mark on the tree, it would be obvious and everyone would go, oh my god, Rarity's going to become an alicorn princess, what? By doing it this way, it is very subtle, and while suggesting that Rarity is up there with the likes of Celestia, Luna, and Twilight, it doesn't draw attention to that fact. Also interesting to note that it was still there in the finale, even after someone at BabsCon asked Megan McCarthy why the tree had Rarity's cutie mark on it. It's true, it had been substantially faded, but it was still there. So this seems to very strongly support the theory. But there's another, more minor piece of evidence that supports it in the finale. In the finale, Twilight gets a castle. Now her castle has her cutie mark all over it, in particular on the outside. But what's interesting is that her cutie mark, that star on the exterior, actually creates a diamond shape with a circle/oval in the middle and 8 lines coming out of it in pretty much the exact same pattern as Celestia's jewelry or Rarity's cutie mark. Now, this isn't per se to say anything, but it is kind of odd. It seems possible that there is significance to this. So I would say at the end of the season, my 2 bigger theories are still afloat. Now that being said, while I 100% support and agree with my analysis on Rarity becoming an alicorn princess, I think my analysis is sound, but I don't think it's going to come to pass. I think the conclusion is wrong. Now, why? Well, if you watched my last video, you know I said the key part of an analysis is your assumptions. If you have good assumptions and good facts and reasoning, you're going to get a good conclusion. But if you have a bad assumption, even with good facts and reasoning, your conclusion is going to be wrong. I no longer agree with my assumptions. I had two closely related assumptions for my theory. First, the writers and animators were doing things purposefully. And the second closely related one is that they were doing things for a reason. After season 4, I no longer believe that they were doing this purposefully. I do not think there was a deliberate attempt to do these. I think these were coincidences. Despite the huge amount of times we have never seen a gem that looks just like Rarity's cutie mark, I think they were just doing that by accident. I don't think there was a deliberate effort to do that. Why? Well, to be perfectly honest, I have lost faith in the writers. Everyone thought that making Twilight an alicorn made sense. Many people saw it coming. They might not have seen it coming at the end of season 3, but most people would have agreed that was a logical place for Twilight to go. It makes much more sense for Twilight to become an alicorn princess than it does for Rarity. And yet, they've done a much better job building up Rarity than they did as Twilight. In Twilight, they really didn't do too much about suggesting it and building it up until you started season 3, where they knew they were doing that at the end of the season. And even then, at least in my opinion, it felt kind of forced and obvious. It didn't feel subtle or clever in that sense. I find it hard to believe that for Twilight, they were totally incapable of doing a subtle, slow building up of her to this. And that for Rarity, since the start, they've been doing this slow, clever little thing where they slowly are suggesting this until it blooms. It's two very, very different approaches. I do not see how they could do one so well and one so poorly. It doesn't make sense. It seems more likely that they're accidentally doing this. Now, it's fully possible she will become an alicorn princess. I think there's a good chance all the main cast will become alicorns. But it strikes me that the base assumptions of my theory are questionable, if not wrong. I don't think my assumptions are right, and as such, I can't agree with the conclusion anymore. I think the analysis itself is sound. The reasoning is fine. The facts are fine. But since the assumptions are wrong, I think the conclusion is wrong. So while I do not repudiate my theory, while I do not disagree with my reasoning and will stand by it, I don't think it's actually going to come to pass. So that more or less sums up my theories that I had last season and more. So I hope you found this video interesting, and until next time, stay derpy, my friends.